Hello everybody and welcome back to Carried Away Travels. In this week's video, I'm going to help you maximize your time on the Trail Ridge Road in Rocky Mountain National Park by sharing the best scenic outlook points and 2 epic hikes. By the way, if this is your first time here, I'm Carrie, and I share helpful travel tips, itineraries, gear recommendations, and more so you can always have the perfect trip. And in this video, I want to make sure that you have the absolute perfect experience in Rocky Mountain National Park. Now, if you've been following my Colorado series, you may have heard me mention Trail Ridge Road a couple different times, primarily in my 5-day Colorado itinerary and a video talking about the best scenic drives in Rocky Mountain National Park. Today, I really want to dive into more detail about this particular road and just show you all the different beauty that it has to offer. Now, Trail Ridge Road is 48 miles long and it stretches most of the way across Rocky Mountain Park from Estes Park to Grand Lakes. So as you can imagine, there is a lot to see on this road. There are numerous hikes and it can be kind of overwhelming to figure out where you need to concentrate your time, which is why I wanted to create this video for you today. There is definitely a stretch of road that has the highlights on it, as well as 2 awesome hikes, and that's where I'm going to recommend that you focus most of your time. And then if you have more time to spare, go off and see the rest of it. Of course, you may be wondering why this road? Like, why out of everything in Rocky Mountain National Park should I come visit here? And all I can say is the views are going to be some of the most breathtaking ones you've probably ever seen in your life. I know that was the case for me. These views still stick with me. I want to go back to Colorado because of this road. I need more of this in my life. It is absolutely breathtaking. This road is the highest continuously paved road in America, and it reaches heights of over 12,000 feet above sea level. So if you can just picture with me for a minute how high that is and the type of views you can get when you are driving across the tops of mountains, it is absolutely insane. So what many people do is just drive along this road, which, that's what roads are for. But if that is all you do, I honestly believe that you're cheating yourself because a lot of the beauty of this road really does require you to just stop and take it in, not to do a drive-by. Plus, the 2 hikes I'm going to recommend are just so fantastic. It really is worth your time to get out of your car, move your feet a little bit, and just get a better look at this beautiful national park. Before I dive right into the specific stops and hikes, I do want to share some practical advice to make sure that you can actually enjoy this trip to the fullest. Keep in mind that you will be traveling at 12,000 feet in elevation, which is something that your body is probably not used to unless you're an avid hiker. So here are just a few quick tips to keep in mind. First up, bring plenty of water. I highly recommend having a full water bottle at the start of the day, maybe 2, because you will dehydrate quicker than you realize at this high in elevation. And so you really need to remember to drink lots of water, refill your water bottle whenever you can, and just be very conscientious about what the elevation is doing to your body. Secondly, make sure that you dress in layers, especially once you get going on a hike. You may be toasty pretty quick if you work up a sweat, or maybe you're warm in your car. But once again, at this elevation, the weather can change dramatically. It can also be very, very cold. It can be very sunny outside, and as soon as you step out, you may be very cold. So I highly recommend you bring a jacket that's easy to take on and off, maybe a long sleeve shirt underneath that. Just have layers that you can adjust to fit with the current temperatures. Third, you'll probably want altitude sickness medication. This is generally a good idea for a lot of Rocky Mountain National Park just because it is so high, but 12,000 feet can really mess with your body. And if you get altitude sickness, you'll dizzy, you can have headaches, nausea, fatigue. It is just not fun. That is not how you want to spend your day. So I recommend getting some altitude sickness medication. You can get that off of Amazon for pretty cheap and start taking that a day or two before you actually enter the park just to make sure it's in your system and you have all your bases covered. Lastly, wear good hiking shoes. This is not the place that you want to come with your cute little sneakers, especially if you plan to take any hikes. I really recommend that you have good hiking boots or shoes with solid tread. You do not want to take a misstep and turn an ankle or slide down a mountain. So just be smart about the footwear you have as well. Ankle support is never a bad idea either. One of the hikes I'm going to recommend in particular here is very rocky. So just make sure you're smart about your footwear. It's comfortable, it's durable, and you'll have a great time. And now on to the fun stuff. So I'm going to make the assumption that you're staying in Estes Park since that's where most people stay. So I'm going to take you on a route that goes from east to west across the park on Trail Ridge Road. With that in mind, I'm going to recommend that you skip the Beaver Meadows entrance, which is just crowded all the time because of everyone trying to get to Bear Lake, and instead come in at the Fall River entrance, which is just a little bit north. This entrance is typically a lot slower, and it's just a little bit closer to Highway 34, which is where Trail Ridge Road starts as well, so it just works out better all around. Once you get on Trail Ridge Road, I recommend you drive this for about 30 minutes until you get to the Rainbow Curve Outlook. This is an absolutely stunning spot that's high up in the mountains and it overlooks this really beautiful valley. When we did this, it was kind of early in the morning, so there was still a little bit of color to the sky, and you just get this sweeping view of several different mountains, river, the valley. It is all absolutely gorgeous. This area also has a sign that details what's in front of you. So you know exactly what you're looking at from the specific mountain peaks to the river that's down there. I really appreciated that because it helped the view stick with me a little bit more and it wasn't just this vague mountain range off in the distance. I could look and be like, oh, it's this peak and this. So I thought that was very helpful. Again, this is just a very beautiful view. There's lots of parking here and restrooms as well if you need them. So this just, I thought was the perfect first stop for your adventure. About 4 minutes down the road from here, you're going to find the Ute Trailhead, which was one of my favorite hikes from our entire time in Rocky Mountain National Park. You may need to circle just a little bit for parking. We ended up having to park just a little ways down the road, which I did find odd because the parking lot was full, but we saw next to no one on this hike. So I don't know where they ended up, but just keep in mind you may need to drive a little ways away to park here. But once you find a spot, come back to the Ute Trailhead. It is so gorgeous. Now, this is a moderate to challenging hike. I personally found the hardest part was right at the beginning, so don't let that deter you, but it is very rocky. Whereas, like the Bear Lake corridor, the paths were wider and, flat, foresty. This is alpine hiking. So it's very rocky. You'll need to watch your step, but the views here are just absolutely stunning. I particularly loved the beginning of this hike though, because there were so many chonky little marmots running around here. Like there were so many of them. They're just sunning themselves on rocks and they were absolutely adorable. So in my opinion, that's like one of the best ways to start a hike is with marmot companionship. But once we got up in the mountains, they kind of stayed back. The reason this hike is just so gorgeous is because it takes you right along the spine of this mountain ridge. So you have mountain straight ahead, and then you look to either side, and it just drops off in these dramatic, sweeping views, and then you can see the mountains off to the side. It is so beautiful. I have videos here so you can see that, but I just cannot put into words how breathtaking it was to be that high and have these dramatic panoramic views. It was so stunning. So the hike I recommend here specifically is to take the Ute Trailhead to Tombstone Ridge. That is the most popular hike here. It's 1.8 miles each way. And once again, it is kind of rocky. So you do need to watch your step. It'll be a little bit of a slower pace, but it is so worth it just to take your time and look at all these amazing views. If you're lucky, you may run into some mountain goats. Well, hopefully not run into the mountain goats. Please keep a safe distance from any mountain goats you see. But this is a prime spot to see them. We unfortunately didn't get to come across any, but we saw the evidence that they'd been there. So watch your step for that too. Besides that, this is just such a great hike to get such a pure glimpse of what this national park has to offer. It's just absolutely unspoiled up here. You can't see any cars, you're away from traffic. It is just you and nature, and it is so incredible. This hike will probably take you a couple hours. It's 3.6 miles round trip. Again, it is a slower hike. So I do recommend you keep an eye on the time if you are going to try and pack in more beyond what I recommend here. But if you do have the time to spare, definitely enjoy it. Once you're done at the Ute Trailhead, hop back in your car and head about 3 minutes down the road to the Forest Canyon Overlook. Now, this is one of the more extensive overlooks. They have a large parking lot and there's a trail it's very short. It's just a couple minutes walk, but it takes you down to the actual outlook point that they've situated just perfectly on the edge of this ridge, and you get such a gorgeous view of the mountains spread out in front of you once again. It is so pretty. There's also a field off to one side, and we actually saw some elk grazing right there, which was so fun. So this is another just great look at the mountains. It's a different angle, and they also have a sign there that identifies some of the ridges and other features right in front of you, which once again, I really appreciated. Next up is Rock Cut, which is more of just a like roadside pull off. Like there's no parking, you just pull off to the side of the road. It's not actually identified, so I am going to put the Google map up. If you can't find it, I just recommend stopping at the Tundra Communities Trailhead instead. Now, the view for this is on the left-hand side of the road if you're driving east to west. So this may be one you want to save and hit on the way back if it's a little easier, but you gotta stop here. This view is so stunning. We actually drove by it a few different times. We caught it with fog, we caught it with just bright, sunny weather. But what really stood out to me was that you could so clearly see this lake just nestled into these mountain peaks across the way. It is beautiful. So if you do stop on this initial trip, you'll need to park on the right hand side of the road and then very carefully cross to the other side. There is a stone wall on this section of the road, so you do have a little safety buffer. You can go stand there. It is just so gorgeous. Definitely worth taking the extra time to pull over and not just drive by. Like I mentioned, you can also go to the Tundra Communities Trailhead, which is just a little bit further up the road. It's not quite the same view, but it's almost the same view, and it does have a parking lot. So if you're more comfortable with that, I would just say park with the Tundra Communities Trailhead, and then once again, carefully cross the road, and you'll get almost the exact same thing. Next up is the Lava Cliffs Overlook, and this is a really cool part of the park because you can actually see a lava wall that's with that 12,000 feet elevation. I thought that was so fascinating. And of course, it makes sense that Rocky Mountain National Park had volcanic activity that created these gorgeous and rugged mountains. But to actually see the lava cliffs was just kind of an eye opener. It's a relatively small patch, but it does have a rather distinct color and texture compared to the surrounding mountains. It also just has a very beautiful view of kind of a valley that dips down from there and the mountains around it. Something else that hit me was, oh, well, these mountains don't exactly look super high here. And then I realized, well, duh, because I'm at 12,000 feet in elevation to begin with. So it is kind of cool just to think about how high up you are from here and just take in that beautiful view from that perspective. At this point, you're probably rather tired and hungry, so I recommend that you spend some time at the Alpine Visitor Center. Now, first off, this visitor center has an absolutely incredible view looking down a valley. If you saw my other video about the Old Fall River Road, you look down the valley that road comes through. It is absolutely stunning. It's got these crazy cliffs off to the side, and it's very common to see elk grazing over there as well. If you have binoculars or a zoom lens, this is a great opportunity to pull those out. It is just so stunning. This is another view that we saw a couple different times, once with a bunch of fog and then once on just a very clear morning. And I mean, they were such different moods, but they were both absolutely beautiful. So you'll want to spend some time here taking in that view. And then after that, I recommend you take full use of the visitor center facilities. Get some water, go to the bathroom, get some lunch. This is pretty much the only place in this area you're going to find it. So get some food. And if you've been looking for a good Rocky Mountain National Park souvenir, they have so many. Like, this visitor center store is ginormous. It has so many sections. They have like the standard t-shirts and hats and all that, but they also have a lot of things that were made by local artisans, so you can get some pretty unique stuff in here. So it's definitely worth your time to browse around there while you recover from the morning. Once you're ready to get back at it, you're going to start strong with your second hike up the Alpine Ridge Trail. Now, this trail is also called Buffer's Trail because it is literally going to take your breath away. But don't worry, it's worth it. This trail is only 0.6 miles round trip, but it's a pretty intense hike because it takes you from 11,796 feet in elevation to 12,005 feet in elevation very quickly. And as that air gets thinner and thinner, it does make it a little hard to breathe. Thankfully, they do have signs along the way that let you know what's happening is okay. And it gives you the science behind why you can't breathe. So for anyone that's having a panic attack partway up, you realize, oh, it's just there's no air. But if you can brave the trip all the way to the top, you are going to be rewarded with some absolutely beautiful views. This particular point kind of stands on its own from the surrounding area. So the first thing you're going to see is like the drop-offs and then the mountains off in the distance. On a clear day, you can actually see all the way to the plains of Wyoming, which is just absolutely insane to me. But you are so high and have such a great view that you can see to the next state. That's absolutely awesome. This is also just a hotspot for wildlife, so keep an eye out for more marmots, pika, possibly mountain goats, and we also saw a herd of elk grazing just below this as well, so you never know what's going to be up there. Oh, and on the plus side, the trip down is way easier than the trip up, so once you get up there, don't be dreading the return hike. It's going to be much easier. Something to keep in mind with the elevation, it can change the pressure in like your water bottle, for example. So be careful if you flip open the tab to your water bottle because it may just squirt you in the face, which is a cold and unexpected surprise. So keep that in mind. Also along that, you should make sure your camera is a safe distance away from your water bottle when you open it so that it also doesn't get splashed with an unexpected stream of water. That may or may not be based off of a true story. All right, once you make it back down the steps and to your car, I recommend heading to the Continental Divide. Now, you're going to pass a few other scenic outlook points along here, but this is the one I think you should concentrate your time on because it is just a really cool spot. Rocky Mountain National Park has 28 miles of the Continental Divide running through it. And if you don't know what the Continental Divide is, which I had to look this up because I wasn't quite sure what the impact of this was. This is a place where water switches the directions in which it drains and goes into two different oceans. So within a very short distance of each other, there are two creeks, and one drains into the Atlantic and one drains into the Pacific, which is really fascinating to me, just how they can be so close but go completely opposite ways. And so this water could start right in the same spot but end up in completely different oceans. But besides the cool science factor, this area is just really, really beautiful. It's down in a valley. There's a really pretty lake. You get a lot of just beautiful greenery and trees and forest in this area. This is also another wildlife hotspot. If this is the farthest west you go, this will probably be your best chance to see moose, but that becomes a little more prevalent the further west and south you go in the park. But there's also just all sorts of other wildlife here, which I just love. I know I keep mentioning that, but I cannot tell you how exciting it was for me to see my first elk. So I wish that experience for you as well as the marmots and all that. So this is another great place to see some of that wildlife. If you do have time and energy, there is also a hike here. It's the Milner's Pass, and we were not able to fit this in for our particular trip, but it is a highly recommended trail if, once again, you have the legs to do some more hiking and it's not too late in the day. Now, if you do find yourself with some extra time in the day, here's what I would recommend you do with it. If you have time but not energy, just hop back on Shore Ridge Road and drive it all the way to Grand Lakes. It is a very beautiful drive. There are some more outlook points if you want to add those in. And once again, the further you go down this road, the better your chance of seeing moose. So if that's a priority, you can definitely do that. If you have time and energy, there are also a number of additional hikes further down this road, mostly past the Continental Divide. You can stop and check out any number of those if you want to add some additional hiking to your day. Whatever you do, keep in mind that it is going to take a decent bit of time to drive back to Estes Park. I do not recommend being on this road after dark. It is not lit. It is extremely high. There are some hairpin curves. And so during the day, it's not a big deal. But this is not something you want to start the drive back after dark. And from the Continental Divide, it's going to take an hour. So if you go all the way to Grand Lakes, you need to add extra time for that. So just keep that in mind. Depending on the time of year you visit, you may not have a lot of daylight left once you reach this point. So just be really smart about it. If you're unsure, I would say just start your drive back from the Continental Divide and hit any additional pull-off points you may have missed, or just enjoy the drive. It is absolutely stunning both ways. We drove up and down the stretch of road a few different times, and each time I saw something different. It was like I saw it from a different angle, and it was just beautiful. So that is going to be well worth your time just to do the return journey that you did. Now, alternatively, if you really want to maximize your views for the day, like maybe you're not as concerned about hiking, but you're here for the views, there is an alternate route you can take here, and I have a full video detailing how this works. You can start your day on Old Fall River Road instead. This is a one-lane dirt road that begins by the Fall River entrance, right near the Sheeps Lake Information Center. And so this one-lane road crosses Rocky Mountain National Park from near Sheeps Lake to the Alpine Visitor Center. It is absolutely stunning. There's not really a lot of stops, but it is just like a very slow, beautiful, scenic drive. So you could take that from east to west, come on at the Alpine Visitor Center, hop over to the Continental Divide, and then do the itinerary recommended backwards and just hit everything as you go from west to east instead. If you aren't really interested in taking the hikes, that's kind of how I would recommend you spend your day instead. Once again, you can get all the details for that in the other video, and I'm going to link that above. And that is how I would recommend you spend your day on the Shore Ridge Road in Rocky Mountain National Park. There is enough to do here that I do recommend setting aside most of a day for it. If you're interested in adding some additional stuff onto it, You definitely can if you just kind of push through the stops and don't linger for too long. I would not recommend trying to hit Bear Lake at the end of the day just because it gets so insanely crazy. So I would definitely say if you want to do Bear Lake, make that its own thing and then make this a separate day, just to make sure you can really get the most of your time there and not spend it sitting in traffic. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop those below. I will be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. And you can read more about this road and these different stops on my blog at cochranewriting.com if you are interested. Once again, I also have several other Colorado resources. So if you're planning a trip to Rocky Mountain National Park or Colorado as a whole, I would love if you took a look at those videos and blog posts. I think they'll be a huge asset to you and just make planning a lot easier. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you would, please take a second to give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to Carried Away Travels before you go, and I hope that you'll be back again next week for the newest video. Thank you so much for being here, and happy travels.